The gates of Hastinapura groaned open, not just for the return of its exiled princess, but for destiny itself. Kunti stepped into the capital not with broken hopes, but with the future of Bharat in her shadow. Behind her walked 5 sons, children of gods, shaped by wilderness, scarred by loss. The city watched in silence. Yudhishthir's calm gaze melted into the people. Bhima's steps shook the earth. Arjuna, with eyes like still water, held a presence that made warriors blink. Nakula and Sahadeva moved with grace, untouched by pride. The royal court welcomed them, but the halls felt colder. Long before history was written, a war shook the heavens and split the earth. This is the Mahabharata, not just a story, but a cosmic saga of gods, warriors, curses, and fate. A battle between Dharma and Adharma, truth and betrayal, where every choice shapes eternity. Welcome to Dark Whispers, where forgotten legends are brought back to life. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and turn on the bell icon and follow the Whispers of Destiny. The people cheered, ministers bowed. Dhritarashtra embraced Kunti with strained warmth, but inside the palace halls a storm was forming. The Kauravas stood watching, 100 pairs of eyes, led by Duryodhana's smoldering glance. He said nothing, but his mind screamed. They left with nothing and returned like gods. Even young princes sensed it. The 5 who returned were not ordinary. They were favored by something higher, something silent, and something frightening. And for the first time, the throne of Hastinapura trembled. Duryodhana, son of the blind king and the blindfolded queen, had ruled the entire palace like a sun. Now, he was eclipsed. At the training grounds, he watched Bhima lift maces like feathers. He saw Arjuna's arrows cut through wind like it bowed to him. And each night, he clenched his fists harder. But envy is not loud. It's a shadow that grows in silence. Before the princes of Hastinapura would one day raise bows against their king, before a war of dharma would shake the world, there existed a man, neither king nor sage, but one whose wounds would one day shape the war itself. His name was Drona. The world remembers him as Acharya Drona, the teacher of gods and kings. But before the title, before the glory, there was only the fire. Drona was not born in a palace. He was born in the sacred silence of a hermitage. His father was sage Bharadwaja, seer who saw beyond form and name, whose mind roamed with the stars and whose voice echoed in the Vedas. Drona was a child of tapas, born not of luxury but of austerity. His name meant wooden vessel, and like one, he absorbed everything poured into him. He mastered scriptures with the breath of a chant. He understood mantras, weapons, astronomy, and the science of war, not from scrolls, but from the silence between the winds of the forests. In that hermitage, fate brought another boy, Drupada, the crown prince of Panchala. The sage's hut made no distinction between kings and commoners. And so Drona and Drupada studied as equals, ate from the same bowl, chanted the same hymns, dreamed under the same stars. They laughed, wept, bled together under the Guru's cane. And in that innocence, Drupada once said, "When I become king, Drona, my friend, you shall rule beside me. Half my kingdom shall be yours." Drona had smiled, not because he desired the kingdom, but because the words were pure. A friend's promise were more sacred than gold. Years passed. Drupada returned to Panchala and rose as its sovereign. Drona remained a Brahmana, bound by dharma and duty. But the world is not kind to learned men. without wealth. He married Kripi, the sister of royal priest Kripacharya. Together they had a son, Ashwatthama, a boy glowing with purpose but born into poverty. Drona, though filled with knowledge enough to teach kings, had no coin to buy milk for his son. And one day, he watched Kripi mix flour and water in secret, pretending it was milk, to silence Ashwatthama's innocent hunger. That night, something broke inside Drona, not his dignity, but the illusion that knowledge alone brings honor. Clutching hope like a last ember, Drona traveled to Panchala. He stood before Drupada, no longer a student, but a king wrapped in pride. He reminded him gently of their shared youth, of the days when they walked barefoot over thorns and learned the art of truth. But Drupada laughed. Friendship only exists between equals, Brahmana. I am a king. You are a beggar. Those words burned louder than fire. Drona walked away, not with shame, but with a vow. You denied me friendship, O Drupada. Then you shall receive war. From that moment, Drona's fire awoke. He had no longer sought alms. He sought a purpose. Not revenge alone, but a place from where his vengeance could grow righteously. He wandered the land, a forgotten flame in robes of dust. Kings ignored him. Scholars dismissed him. But his eyes held storms unspoken. And then, fate turned. One day his footsteps led him to the walls of Hastinapura, where princes played with leather balls and golden bows, and destiny waited with folded arms. The dusty path led Drona to the outskirts of Hastinapura. There, beneath the ancient trees, the laughter of royal boys echoed. Innocent, princely, and unaware of fate. The Kuru princes, the sons of Pandu and Dhritarashtra, played with bows and spears, chasing a ball across the palace lawns. Suddenly, the ball slipped from Arjuna's fingers and fell into a deep, dark well, nestled between thick stone. They rushed forward, peering in. The well swallowed their laughter. How do we retrieve it? They whispered. No rope, no staff, no solution. Even Yudhishthira, wise and composed, stood puzzled. Bhima, with all his might, could not reach. Arjuna, the keen-eyed archer, stood helpless. And just then, a figure stepped from the shade of a tree. Dusty robes, wrinkled skin, a sharp gaze like fire trapped in still water. Drona had arrived. He said nothing. He merely observed. The boys turned toward the stranger. A Brahmana, perhaps mad, perhaps holy. They asked, half mocking, "Can you retrieve our ball, old one?" Drona's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in revelation. Without a word, he bent down and picked up a blade of grass. He chanted a mantra under his breath, so ancient it echoed with the voice of gods. The grass stiffened in his hand like a spear. With effortless precision, he threw it into the well. It stuck into the inner wall. Another, then another. He built a ladder of spears, made not of steel, but of sanctified grass. And finally he used his bowstring, and with divine aim pulled the ball from the depths. The princes stood speechless. Their pride dissolved into wonder. Who was this man? It was Arjuna, the spark of Indra, who stepped forward first. He bent his head low. "Acharya," he whispered, "teach me." And in that moment the forest trembled. The sky grew still, for the flames of Drona's destiny, long buried under dust and pain, had found new fuel. Not vengeance alone, but students and princes, who would become the greatest warriors the world would ever see. When the word of the incident reached Bhishma, the grand sire of Hastinapur, he came to the forest himself, mounted on a chariot of gold in silence. He looked upon Dronacharya, not as a stranger, but as a storm long awaited. He offered him what Drona had never been given before: honor, position, and a secret duty. Come to the palace, Bhishma said. Become the Guru of Kuru. Train our heirs, guide our sons. Drona bowed not to Bhishma, but to destiny. The forgotten flame had found its altar, and thus Drona entered the palace gates not as a guest, but as a torchbearer of war, the architect of both glory and grief. The training began at sunrise. Drona rose before the light. The boys were summoned before the dew left the grass. He taught not with softness, but with silence, discipline, and ritual. Their days were divided like verses in a Veda: archery, swordplay, wrestling, ethics, astronomy, and dharma. Bhima, with strength that cracked trees, was taught control. Yudhishthira, calm and steady, was given the responsibility of moral dilemmas. Nakula and Sahadeva, agile and sharp-eyed, were trained in sword and horse riding. The Kauravas, 100 strong, loud, unruly, were taught formation, teamwork, and loyalty. But it was Arjuna who shone like the morning star. Every moment Arjuna made was poetry in motion. His arrows flew straighter. His mind was focused still as a Himalayan lake. Drona watched and remembered the boy's words at the well. He saw in Arjuna a weapon of divine precision, forged not just by skill, but by devotion. One night Arjuna was found practicing archery in the dark, learning by sound and instinct. Drona smiled. He spoke, rarely, but when he did, it echoed with finality. Among all my students, Arjuna shall be the greatest. From that moment, Arjuna's training intensified. While others slept, he honed his bow. While others played, he meditated on the curve of arrows in the wind. In the shadows of Arjuna's rise, another seed sprouted, not of dharma, but one of envy. Duryodhana, proud, heir to the Kuru throne, watched his cousin rise in fame and favor, and his fists clenched tighter each day. Bhima, his greatest rival in brute strength, mocked the Kauravas without fear. Daily duels between cousins grew more intense, masked as training but filled with resentment. Drona observed it all, silently. He taught them all equally, but he loved justice more than power. In the privacy of his chamber where no prince could see, Drona took out a small clay doll. He looked at it longingly. It was shaped like a crowned man, carved roughly with pain. Drupada, the memory of betrayal still lived in his heart, not as fire but as frozen time. He whispered, "I shall fulfill my vow, Drupada. I shall send a student to break your pride, and with your own gift I shall reclaim what you denied me." Thus, while the world saw a teacher, Drona was also a craftsman of revenge. Training under Drona was not merely about warfare. He taught the code of a warrior: to never attack the weak, to uphold dharma over desire, to serve the kingdom above the self. He taught them names of celestial weapons, but also the price of invoking them. He spoke of compassion as strength, and warned that wrath was the sharpest poison. Among the students walked like a shadow was Ashwatthama, Dronacharya's own son. The boys accepted him like a brother, though his mind was far older than his years. His eyes were distant, haunted by a past he could not voice. He was a boy who had tasted hunger, seen pride crumble, and now lived in his father's second birth. And in him too lived the seed of wrath unspoken. The bows had been lifted, the swords sharpened. The princes of Hastinapura were no longer boys, but were warriors in bloom. And yet, fate had barely begun its descent. In the next episode of Feast, a trick, a cruel laugh. Poison shall be served not on a plate, but in a pond. For even in learning, hatred brews quietly. But the first true blow will not be struck by an enemy. It will be one brother against another.